So welcome to today's video. This is day 91 of Through the Bible in 1 year. So in today's text, we're going to be covering 1 Samuel, verse 18 to 20. And I highlighted 3 key events that happened in today's Bible study video, which are David's wife is actually stolen. Saul prophesies again, which you'll find quite interesting considering we've started to see how Saul's being troubled by an evil spirit. And we wrap up today's Bible study with David going on the run. So if this is something you're interested in following along with us on our journey, then make sure you subscribe to the channel below and let's get into today's video. So if you've been following along with us in our recent Bible studies, we just covered the famous event of David killing Goliath, and so many different scenarios stem out of that which are quite interesting. But one of the big things, probably the biggest thing out of everything, is it makes David ultimately a household name in Israel. And this is just basically what we're going to start off continuing with that theme. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. So this is really interesting for a number of reasons, okay? We've highlighted and learnt about Jonathan in previous videos, but now so to the point, what are we seeing? We're seeing that Jonathan loves David as his own soul. And this is one of the things that's going to be very vital continuing the storyline, because we have heard about Jonathan previously and how he's been a strong person in Israel. He's delivered people from war and all those different kind of things. And this is really interesting because Jonathan and David have both shown themselves to be able soldiers, okay, bringing huge deliverance from the Philistines to Israel, okay? And obviously, while David's been doing all the stuff he's doing, Jonathan has a real appreciation for David. And Saul took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that upon him and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword and to his bow and to his girdle. And David went out whithersoever Saul sent him, behaved himself wisely, and Saul set him over the men of war, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people and also in the sight of Saul's servants. Now, this is vital for a number of reasons, okay? Firstly, okay, these two make a covenant. A covenant was basically a promise, ultimately. But what is really vital? What do we see? We see that Jonathan imparts certain things to David. And this is really vital for at least one key reason that I'm going to bring up in a moment. But look what it does. It says he gives him his robe, his garments, his sword, his bow, and his girdle. So notice these things, okay? 5 things it says that Jonathan gave David. We've seen this theme, and I've kind of touched on this a little bit already as we've gone through it, because I don't want to give you all the answers. This is sort of supposed to be a basic walkthrough through the scriptures as you just kind of get a basic understanding of what the Bible's actually teaching through Genesis to Revelation. But one of the things I highlighted previously, okay, what happened when David went to fight Goliath initially, okay? So one thing we saw Saul give David his armor. Now, this was King Saul, okay, I might add. And what did David do? David said no. And why is this so vital? This is so vital because King Saul tried to give David his armor, okay, his weaponry, his sword, everything like that, to go to battle. David rejected it. And it's really interesting when you're looking at one of the undertones is we've seen that Saul over the last few chapters has been rejected by God as being king. And God said, I'm going to raise up someone else. We also saw David be that person that God would anoint through the prophet Samuel, okay? Now, I don't want to go over your head or anything, but David rejected the armor. Why did he say? He said it hadn't been proved. So David ultimately saying, look, I can't use this armor. I'm not ready for it. I'm going to go and do my own thing, okay? But when Jonathan provides his robe, his garment, his sword, his bow, and his girdle, did we read David saying no? No. He took them, okay? And this is Prince Jonathan. Okay. And one of the things I've mentioned previously in the previous videos is certain things have happened to Jonathan. Okay. Some by himself, some inflicted by King Saul, or if you want to put them two together. Okay. Where King Saul made a curse. He said, anyone who eats before we get deliverance should be killed. It so happened that Jonathan was the person that ate, okay, before the battle was won. And there's all subtle allusions through the scripture. As you read the scripture, you see these things going on, okay? So David didn't want King Saul's armor. He didn't want the king's armor, okay? But he was able to take Jonathan's armor. He was the prince. Why? Because King Saul has been rejected. What you're going to find is Jonathan is going to be the heir, and Jonathan is slowly but surely, as you walk through the scripture, imparting the kingship over to David. God has already decreed it. Samuel, the prophet, has already anointed David, but this is just the subtle things you see through the text with Jonathan towards David. Okay, this is one of those clear-cut examples where he gave him all of his weaponry and his armory and said, "Here, you take it," and David accepted it. Okay. 6. And it came to pass as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the women came out of all cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul, with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music. And the women answered as they played, and said, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Now notice this, which is really vital. Another allusion to this whole Jonathan and David transition. Okay, we read previously, and I've alluded to this already, when Jonathan was the person to win the battle. Okay, I mentioned this in the video at the time. The glory went to Saul. Okay, but what happens this time? David comes back from the battle. Women come out with instruments and are singing. The song they sing is, Saul kills his thousands, David kills his tens of thousands. So you can already see another subtle shift from the praise that Jonathan should have got previously, which he didn't. Saul got it, to now David is getting the glory. Okay, and how do we know this is even significant? And this isn't just me or anyone looking at the text and saying to ourselves, "Oh, we're just over exaggerating." What does it say next? It says, and Saul, verse 8, was very wroth, and the saying displeased him. And he said, they have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands. And can he have more but the kingdom? So what does he say? Saul knows specifically what's happening here. He knows that the women singing this song, okay, are basically accrediting him as basically king. Because if there's some random guy, okay, he's just some random guy out of Israel getting more praise, glory, and honor than the king of the nation, of the king of Israel, what does that mean? That means that person is a huge threat to the king, okay? Now, we already know, because we get the bird's eye view look, basically. We've already seen David be anointed king, okay, in the midst of his brothers and his dad, okay? Saul doesn't necessarily know this yet, per se. All he knows is he has lost the kingship, okay, and it's going to be given to someone else. His intentions are still to make Jonathan the king, and we'll see that as the scriptures unfold anyway, but Saul is seeing this clear and uncut. We don't know if the women actually understand this or know this, but that's just the song they're singing based on David's deliverance and the way he's behaving himself so professionally. What does it say next? 9, and Saul eyed David from that day and forward, because he ultimately knows now, like I already mentioned, if they're accrediting him 10 times more more glory, then he knows that David is a threat. And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand as at other times, and a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast a javelin, for he said, I will smite David even to the wall. And David avoided out of his presence twice. So what do we see? We see that Saul now tries to kill David. And not only once, but twice. But it says both times ultimately that David was able to avoid and get out of the way. 12. And Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him and was departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from him and made him his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. So imagine this, okay? Saul then says, look, you know what? I'm going to make him a captain over thousands. So he's not next to me. But you know the problem with this? What does it say? He went out before the people. So this basically means he's now strictly designated basically to go out to battle, go out to war. And he's going to be going out and coming in before the people. And what are the people already singing? They're already singing David is a bigger and greater, 10 times more the deliverer than Saul. So as he continues to go out to battle, what do you think they're going to continue to say? Okay, Saul doesn't understand how he is actually himself physically now handing over the kingdom in the actions that he's doing. 14. And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord with him. Wherefore, when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David. Why? What does it say? Because he went out and came in before them. So the plan that Saul has, you can see, is working against him. Let's keep going. And Saul said to David, behold, my elder daughter Merab, her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me, and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, let not mine hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. And David said unto Saul, who I, and what my life, my father's family in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king. But it came to pass that the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel, the Maholathite, to wife. So one of the first things we highlighted here, David's wife is stolen. So David was supposed to be given Saul's daughter, Merab. But what happens? She somehow, backhanded, Saul allows her to be given to some guy called Adriel. So the woman that would have been David's wife was actually stolen from him and given to another man. Okay, and that was how that happened on Saul's watch. Saul allowed that to happen. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. 21. And Saul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the twain. So Saul is basically saying, look, whether it was Merab or Michal, one way or another, out of these two, you're going to become my son-in-law. And Saul commanded his servants, commune with David secretly, and say, behold, the king hath delight in thee, and all his servants love thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servants spake those words in the ears of David. And David said, seemeth it to you light to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I a poor man and lightly esteemed? So David is outlining to us his big issue, okay? He's poor, okay? He's of no significance, of no importance, basically, in his mind, okay? So he's basically saying, because he's this poor man who's not anyone's particularly special, okay, why should he become son-in-law to the king? So he's basically saying he's not worthy, okay? So again, as we go through this, think about it from God's perspective and the situation that God has decreed that he will be king. But also think about it from man's perspective, the things that David is saying and doing, the things that Saul is saying and doing, the things that Jonathan is saying and doing, the things that the prophet Samuel is saying and doing, etc. Okay? What does Saul do when he hears this news? And the servants of Saul told him, saying, on this manner spake David. So they tell him what he says. And Saul said, thus shall you say to David, the king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. So we've seen this already, okay? Saul is trying to do whatever he can in regards to a battle to make David fall, okay? And he basically uses David's thoughts here to say, okay, you know what? You don't have to give me any dowry, okay? Just give me 100 foreskins of the Philistines, Okay? And he thinks requesting this is going to get David killed. And when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. Wherefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew of the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tell to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal his daughter to wife. So notice what happens, okay? Saul asks for 100, David provides 200. And that's why David was pleased, because Saul didn't ask for any money or anything like that. All Saul said is, look, just give me 100 foreskins. And Saul's saying, look, I'm going to ask this hoping that he dies. David is a man of war, okay? So he's saying, look, I've killed Goliath by God's hand. What is 200? What is 100 foreskins? It's more so much to the point. He gives him 200 foreskins. He gives him double the price. And he's glad to become the son-in-law now, because it's not about money or anything like that. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord with David, and Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually. Then the princes of the Philistines went forth, and it came to pass after they went forth, David behaved himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name was much set back. So if you consider what's actually happening, okay, we're at a position now where David is in line to become king, because not only has he taken Jonathan's armor, okay, and gone about his business. Yes, they've made a covenant together as well. But what also did he do? He married Saul's daughter, Michal, making him son-in-law to the king. So what does he have now? He not only has the people, okay? The people love David more so than the king. Now he has physical access, physical route into the king's lineage ultimately, okay? So he's getting positioned both ways. Now that wraps up the first chapter in today's video. We've covered David's wife getting stolen. We're also going to see Saul prophesy again. And we're going to ultimately go on to see David go on the run. Now, out of these two final things, let me know in the comment section below, what one do you think is going to be more exciting? And do you look forward to covering in today's video? Let me know in the comment section below. So let's continue and pick up at the next chapter, and let's see what it says. So it says, and Saul spake to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill David. So what happens now? Saul is still trying to kill David. And notice how sick this is, okay? David is his son-in-law. And even worse, even more so to the point, Saul wants to make his daughter a widow. So we know this is his plan, to kill his son-in-law and to make his daughter a widow if successful. What does Jonathan say about this? But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David. And Jonathan told David, saying, Saul my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, take heed to thyself until the morning, and abide in a secret, and hide thyself. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou, and I will commune with my father of thee. And what I see, that I will tell thee. And Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, and because his works to thee would very good. For he did put his life in his hand, and slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. Thou sawest and did rejoice. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood to slay David without a cause? And Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan, and Saul sware, the Lord liveth, he shall not be slain. And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan shewed him all those things. And Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence, as in times past. And there was war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines, and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled from him. And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, as he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand. And David played with hand. And Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin. But he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall. And David fled and escaped that night. Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, If thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. So notice what's happening, okay? We've got Jonathan, and we've also got Michal, okay? So this is Saul's own son and daughter, basically interceding, assisting, helping David in regards to Saul's intentions. Because let's say, for example, let's put it this way. At work, Jonathan, okay, is helping, okay, when he's serving the king, when they're out to work, etc. Jonathan is helping him. At home, Michal, his wife, who Saul gave to David with the intentions to be a snare to him, is helping him in regards to Saul, okay, trying to kill him. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image and laid it in the bed and put a pillow of goats for his bolster and covered with a cloth. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, He's sick. And Saul sent the messengers to see David, saying, Bring him up to me in the bed, that I may slay him. And when the messengers were come in, behold, an image in the bed with a pillow of goats for his bolster. And Saul said unto Michal, Why hast thou deceived me so, and sent away mine enemy, that he is escaped? And Michal answered Saul, He said unto me, Let me go, why should I kill thee? So David fled and escaped, and came to Samuel to Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Samuel went and brought in Naioth. So David's had enough of this now, and David flees to Samuel. And it was told Saul, saying, Behold, David at Naioth in Ramah. And Saul sent messengers to take David, and when they saw the company of the prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing appointed over them, the Spirit of God was upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. So what happens? We see Saul sends messengers, and they come along walking. They basically meet them. They see the prophets prophesying. They see Samuel appointed over them. And what happens to them? The first messengers prophesy. Then what happens after that? And when it was told Saul, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they prophesied also. So 3 times he sends people, 3 times they prophesy. So he's trying to send them to basically bring David back so he can kill him, ultimately. But every time he sends people, word gets back to him, oh, the guys you sent, they've actually gone there, and now they start prophesying. So what does he do next? What happens? Then went he also to Ramah, and came to a great well that in Siku. And he asked and said, Where's Samuel and David? And said, Behold, at Naioth in Ramah. And he went thither to Naioth in Ramah, and the Spirit of God was upon him also. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. So notice what happens as well. He goes along, and he ultimately prophesies, okay? So we see, this was the next key thing we saw that we had planned out in the key events that happened, okay? Saul, who we're seeing, is continually plagued, okay, by an evil spirit. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon him, okay, and he starts prophesying. And what does it say next, which I think is really crucial? What does it say? And he stripped off his clothes also, and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and laid down naked all that day and all that night. Wherefore they say, Saul also among the prophets? Now this isn't the first time they've asked this question. Is Saul among the prophets too? Okay. But what happens? He strips down. Now this might well mean he was fully naked. I don't necessarily think it means that per se. I would assume it means more so he took off his kingly armor, his kingly garments, basically. Okay, so the king's robe, the crown, all those kind of stuff, and he was just in his bare garments. Okay, but I'm not disputing the fact that it could literally mean he was stripped down naked. So the last thing we need to cover is David going on the run, and we're going to start chapter 20 by David fleeing again. But this is going to become a theme where David is not only going to be running around, but he's also at one point going to go on the run from Israel. And that's how we're going to end today's chapter. So let's get into it. And David fled from Naioth in Ramah, and came and said before Jonathan, What have I done? What mine iniquity, and what my sin before thy father, that he seeketh my life? And he said unto him, God forbid, thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing, either great or small, but that he will shew it me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It not. And David sware moreover, and said, Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly the Lord liveth, and thy soul liveth, but a step between me and death. Then said Jonathan unto David, Whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do for thee. And David said unto Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow the new moon, and I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field unto the third at even. If thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked of me that he might run to Bethlehem his city, for a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. So what's actually happening here? So we ended 19 talking about how Saul sent messengers and then ultimately went himself. And obviously David wasn't going to stick around to after the point in Saul prophesying. And this is something we're going to see. We've seen already, and we're going to see continually. Okay, Saul is topsy-turvy. Why? Because sometimes the evil spirit is upon him, and then it comes, and then it goes. So when it's on him, he wants to try and kill David and attack him. Then when it's not on him, it seems that Saul and David can be peaceable. Okay, so after Saul sends the 3 groups of messengers, then obviously goes himself. All 4 parties, okay, the 3 groups of messengers he sends, and Saul himself all prophesy. So then after this, David flees back to Jonathan, and he's asking, look, what is it that I've done that Saul wants to kill me? Okay, and Jonathan's saying, no, don't worry. He isn't going to kill you, and if he is planning to do that, he will tell him first. And David's realized now. He said, look, Saul knows, your father knows that he's found grace in Jonathan's sight, so he's not going to tell you anymore. Okay, so David conjures up this plan. He says, look, it's the new moon, so the new month is coming, okay? And he says, give me leave. Because ultimately, what David is outlining to us is that at the beginning of every month, there's a feast, and he has to show up. It's customary, basically what he's saying, to show up before the king and eat at his table. And he's saying, look, give me leave from this situation. So if Saul, your dad, asks about me and says, where is David? Just say, look, he asked me if he could go to Bethlehem for a yearly sacrifice with his family, and just say you let him go. If he say thus, verse 7, well, thy servant shall have peace. But if he be very wroth, be sure that evil is determined by him. Therefore thou shalt deal kindly with thy servant, for thou hast brought thy servant into a covenant of the Lord with thee. Notwithstanding, if there be in me iniquity, slay me thyself, for why shouldest thou bring me to thy father? And Jonathan said, Far be it from thee, for if I knew certainly that evil were determined by my father to come upon thee, then would not I tell it thee? Then said David to Jonathan, Who shall tell me, or what thy father answer thee roughly? And Jonathan said unto David, Come and let us go out into the field. And they went out both of them into the field. So what is Jonathan and David doing here? So David gives him this scenario, okay? Give me leave. And he says, if Saul doesn't say anything, then everything's fine. But if Saul does, there's an issue. So they go back to their familiar procedure. Let's go to the field. Previously, what did they do? They said, go to the field and I'm going to talk to my father. And if everything's all right, then I'm going to bring you along. I'll bring you out and everything's fine. And that will happen the first time. They're basically going back to the field now, and they're going to do similar procedures. 12. And Jonathan said unto David, O Lord God of Israel, when I have sounded my father about tomorrow any time, the third, and behold, good toward David, and I then send not unto thee, and shew it thee, the Lord do so and much more to Jonathan. But if it please my father thee evil, then I will shew it thee, and send thee away, that thou mayest go in peace, and the Lord be with thee, as he hath been with my father. And thou shalt not only while yet I live shew me the kindness of the Lord, that I die not, but thou shalt not cut off thy kindness from my house forever. No, not when the Lord hath cut off the enemies of David, every one from the face of the earth. So Jonathan made with the house of David. Let the Lord even require at the hand of David's enemies. And Jonathan calls David to swear again because he loved him, for he loved him as his own soul. We see a prayer, okay? Jonathan is praying. Firstly, we're seeing that Jonathan does seem to have a relationship with God. But what also do we see? We also see that Jonathan is making a covenant. Then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty. And thou hast stayed 3 days, thou shalt go down quickly and come to the place where thou didst hide thyself, when the business was, and shalt remain by the stone Ezel. And I will shoot 3 arrows on the side, as though I shot at a mark. And behold, I will send a lad, go find out the arrows. If I expressly say unto the lad, behold the arrows on this side of thee, take them. Then come thou for peace to thee, and no hurt, the Lord liveth. But if I say thus unto the young man, behold the arrows beyond thee, go thy way, for the Lord hath sent thee away. So this is their new scenario. Jonathan says, I'm going to shoot out an arrow, okay? And I'm going to send out a guy to go and fetch the arrows. And if I say to the guy, you know what, the arrows are closer, okay, closer to David, closer than David, then come out, everything's fine. But if I shoot the arrow further, okay, and I say, look, go further, the arrow's gone further, then you know to go, okay? So it means go if it's further, come, everything's fine if it's closer, okay? That's the signal, that's the hidden signal, the secret signal, secret message that Jonathan and David have agreed upon. And the matter which thou and I have spoken of, behold the Lord between thee and me forever. So David hid himself in the field, and when the new moon was come, the king sat him down to eat meat. And the king sat upon his seat as at other times, upon a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul spake not anything that day, for he thought something hath befallen him, he not clean. Surely he not clean. Why do you think that? Because obviously, if you're unclean, okay, you'd be unclean until even, okay? That's obviously what the law says, to the evening. So he thinks, okay, because I didn't see him this night, he must be unclean. That's why he can't come. But I'm going to see him tomorrow, because by tomorrow he shall be clean, and he obviously knows he has to show up. What happens next? And it came to pass on the morrow, the 2nd of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said unto Jonathan his son, wherefore cometh not the son of Jesse to meet, neither yesterday nor today? Because now he understands, okay, one day he might be unclean, but if he doesn't show up the 2nd day, then the likelihood is he wouldn't be unclean. And now I need to ask him, where was he yesterday and today? Because it wasn't some sort of uncleanness, more likely than not. 28. And Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked of me to Bethlehem. And he said, let me go, I pray thee, for our family hath a sacrifice in the city, and my brother, he hath commanded me. And now, if I have found favour in thine eyes, let me get away, I pray thee, and see my brethren. Therefore he cometh not unto the king's table. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan, and he said unto him, thou son of the perverse rebellious, do not I know that thou hast chosen the son of Jesse to thine own confusion, and unto the confusion of thy mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse liveth upon the ground, thou shalt not be established, nor thy kingdom. Wherefore now send and fetch him, for he shall surely die. So what does Saul make ever so clear there? Okay, he says, okay, as long as David lives, okay, as long as David lives, Jonathan's kingdom is in jeopardy. Okay, so Saul is making it very clear for us, the readers. Okay, Saul understands. Going back to the previous chapters, 18, 19, the people love David, okay, more than they love Saul. And that means let's say, for example, David, the scripture continues to say David behaved himself wisely. David continued to behave himself wisely. But if David at one point said, you know what, I'm going to take over, okay, he would have the backing of the people and everyone. And that's how Saul is thinking. Look, while he's alive, you cannot be established as king. Now consider all of the things Jonathan has been doing, okay? It makes more sense now that Jonathan understands this. Jonathan understands and knows that David is going to become king, okay? And this is why Jonathan is constantly praying for David, constantly interceding for David, and so confident and conscious of making a covenant with David, because this is what you can see in the future. Saul is, I guess, the person that is just hell-bent on not understanding and seeing this. And Jonathan, 32, and Jonathan answered Saul his father and said unto him, Wherefore shall he be slain? What hath he done? And Saul cast a javelin at him to smite him, whereby Jonathan knew that it was determined of his father to slay David. So notice this as well. Now, Saul tries to kill Jonathan. And this isn't the first time Saul's tried to kill Jonathan. Previous chapters, when Saul realized that Jonathan was the one that breached his oath that he made, Saul's oath and Saul's curse that he made, Saul said at that time, yes, I'm going to kill Jonathan. And Jonathan was willing to let Saul kill him. It was the people that ultimately saved Jonathan out of Saul's hand and said, no, Jonathan's brought this great delivery. How can Jonathan die today? No one's going to die. 34. So Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger and did eat no meat the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David, because his father had done him shame. And it came to pass in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David, and a little lad with him. And he said unto his lad, Run, find out now the arrows which I shoot. As the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the lad was come to the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan cried after the lad and said, Not the arrow beyond thee. So he's now basically following through with this procedure. So David can know, okay, it's time to go, David. 38. And Jonathan cried after the lad, Make speed haste, stay not. And Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came to his master. But the lad knew not anything, only Jonathan and David knew the matter. And Jonathan gave his artillery unto his lad, and said unto him, Go, carry to the city. So he sends him away, okay? His lad, go back to the city, take the artillery, take everything and go. As soon as the lad was gone, David arose toward the south and fell on his face to the ground and bowed himself 3 times. Okay? Sees him, bowed himself 3 times. And they kissed one another and wept one with another until David exceeded. So they see each other, they're kissing each other as they're greeting, they're crying basically and weeping, etc. And it says David wept even more. And Jonathan said to David, Go in peace, forasmuch as we have sworn, both of us, in the name of the Lord, saying, The Lord be between me and thee, and between my seed and thy seed forever. And he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. The reason they're weeping and they embraced each other and kissed each other, etc., is because this is like a goodbye, okay? Why? Because they don't know what's about to happen next ultimately, okay? David might know he's going to become king, but he doesn't know how. And this is the reason. They went through this whole procedure to identify if Saul would actually let David live. They understood from the meeting on the second night that David was not safe, okay? So they're weeping, they're embracing each other, weeping, etc. And they refer back to the covenant again, okay? And what is the covenant? Because some people try and make a big deal about, oh, they kissed each other, even though we see loads of different times, different cultures, people kiss, and not even necessarily means they kiss on the lips, okay? Kiss on the cheeks. If you go to some place in Europe, they do all that kind of stuff. It's just a cultural thing, okay? But what even makes this even more specific, okay? What did they refer back to the covenant? What did Jonathan say? He said, remember the covenant between his seed, between my seed and your seed, okay? So obviously, they're both married men. They're both going to have children, all that kind of stuff. So they didn't have some sort of homosexual relationship going on there, okay? Scripture kind of makes that a bit clear. But this is basically goodbye. Because what's going to happen next is, immediately, it kind of alludes to it already, but David goes on the run. Okay? So that wraps up today's video, day 91, 1 Samuel 18 to 20. And if you want to watch more videos about this kind of stuff, I recommend you watch this video right here, because it's a really vital video in regards to some of the things we covered today. Thanks and take care.